Climbing on the Sparrow branch. CH001. The spring rain outside the window fell softly, like silken threads. A young woman, perhaps 18 or 19 years old, stood by the windowsill. Her face was delicate and beautiful, her eyes clear and serene, like a tranquil lake. Ng, suppressing her worries, stepped out of the inner room. She saw overturned tables and chairs, and shards of broken porcelain scattered on the floor, and a headache began to throb. "Miss, someone from the main courtyard has come to call you again," the maid Binglu approached Ng, her brows furrowed. "The servants will clean up in here later. Let's go quickly, otherwise that person will have another chance to embarrass us." Ng replied faintly and walked ahead, her back straight. Binglu watched her young lady's upright figure and felt a pang of sadness. She sighed silently and hurried to catch up. "Miss, when you see young Master Pei, please don't pay any attention to him. It's not worth it for such a person," Binglu said. She had grown up with Ng since childhood, and their bond was strong. Pei had gone too far this time. For the sake of a concubine's daughter, he wanted to break off the engagement with the legitimate daughter, making her a laughingstock in the entire capital. Binglu wished she could tear that pair of scoundrels to pieces. Ng snorted, unconcerned. "Don't worry, your young lady isn't that easily humiliated." Binglu stood there, surprised. She knew how much her young lady loved Pei. Just yesterday, Pei had secretly asked her to break off the engagement, and for that, the young lady had gotten drunk for the first time and caused a scene at Chunfeng Tower. Luckily, she always disguised herself as a servant when going out, otherwise, if the master found out, everyone in the household would be in trouble. At that moment, Binglu had no idea that after her drunken episode the previous night, her young lady had been reborn, as if 10 years had passed. When Ng first woke up, she felt a bit bewildered, but then she was filled with joy and excitement. Heaven had finally been kind to her, giving her a second chance. In her previous life, on this very same day, Pei had come to the Inn mansion with Enrong, his father's illegitimate daughter, to break off their engagement. Although heartbroken, Ng believed she could win Pei over with her genuine feelings and insisted on marrying him. What happened next? 5 years of living like a widow, followed by 5 years of being imprisoned in the inner courtyard. She remembered that on the night before her rebirth, it was also a rainy day, with raindrops pattering against her, the piercing cold making her shiver. "Sister, you really don't know how to take care of yourself. Look at you, your face is so pale and haggard. If your husband saw you like this, how disgusted he would be." A faint smile came from nearby, and soon after, a pair of exquisitely embroidered shoes came into view. Ng struggled to lift her head. It was Enrong. Pei had plotted for 10 years to give Enrong the status of a legitimate wife. He first framed Ng's brother for rebellion, and then ruined Ng's reputation. These were the things Enrong had told Ng that night. Actually, in the second year of their marriage, Ng had already decided to divorce Pei, but he refused. He wanted her to experience the humiliation of being reviled by others. Later, Ng's life truly became worse than death. Now, walking in the corridor of the Inn mansion again, Ng hadn't yet married Pei. She still had a chance to control her own destiny. Her brother had just begun to stand out in the military, a perfect opportunity to achieve great things. Everything was still possible. This time, with her here, Enrong and her mother Mistress Shu can forget about ever being included in the Inn family genealogy. As for Pei, she hopes he'll stay as far away as possible. With these thoughts in mind, when Ng stepped into the main hall of the Inn mansion, she saw that perfect couple and found them quite irritating. In the main hall, Enrong was only half sitting on her chair, and for every word Changye said, she softly agreed. Obedient and submissive. She had come to the Inn mansion several times before, but always secretly, when Ng wasn't around. Back then, Enrong had dreamed of living in this magnificent mansion, so much grander than the small alley where she and her mother lived. And today, she finally had the opportunity. Thinking of this, Enrong glanced shyly at Pei, who stood beside her. Dressed in elegant blue robes, his skin as fair as moonlight, every move exuded grace and nobility. And now, someone as distinguished as Pei was willing to come in person to break off the engagement just for her. Enrong felt proud and delighted. And Changye stroked his beard. Compared to the haughty eldest daughter Ng, he preferred the gentle and considerate Enrong. As long as it was one of his daughters marrying into the Pei family, he had no objections. "Wronger, your father isn't a stubborn man. Since you two love each other, I have nothing to say. When your sister arrives, just apologize to her." Enrong softly replied, yes, and glanced cautiously at Pei. He nodded reassuringly, telling her not to worry, that he would take care of everything. When Ng entered the main hall, she saw this harmonious scene and frowned slightly, then sat down. Hearing Enrong call her sister, Ng didn't even spare her a glance. Instead, she directly asked Changye, "Did father call me here urgently just so I could witness my fiance having an affair with another woman?" "You." And Chengyi's expression froze, but he knew that Enrong and Pei Yu were indeed in the wrong, and it was natural that Enji would be angry. He composed himself and looked at Enji with a gentle expression. Juror, since you already know about their affair, then just return the engagement gifts and call off the engagement. Of course, the engagement must be called off. Enji huffed, her back still straight. Compared to the timid Enrong on the other side, anyone could see who was the true heiress of the En family. Just in terms of demeanor, Enji was far superior to Enrong, not to mention that Enji was the most beautiful woman in the capital, surpassing Enrong in beauty by a considerable margin. Ever since Pei Yu showed interest in the illegitimate daughter of the En family, many people had criticized him behind his back, saying he was blind, or that he had been bewitched by Enrong's charms. However, Enji's gaze turned cold as she looked at Pei Yu. Thinking of her 10 years of suffering in her previous life, and her brother's death, old grudges welled up within her, making her want to tear Pei Yu apart. Young Master Pei had an affair with an illegitimate daughter, making me a laughingstock in the entire capital. Now, for the engagement to be broken, not even a single elder from your family is here. I suppose your grandfather doesn't even know about this yet, but I won't accept any such dishonorable arrangement. Pei Yu, caught off guard by Enji's words, his lips pursed awkwardly, but he remained composed. Enji, your father has decided to include Wronger in the family genealogy. Please don't call her an illegitimate daughter anymore, it's impolite and makes you seem petty. Besides, if you agree to the engagement break now, I'll go and ask my mother. Family genealogy. Enji's gaze turned sharp and cold, sweeping over in Chengye. When her mother was driven to death by Mistress Shu, Enji had vowed that as long as she lived, she would never allow Mistress Shu and Enrong to be included in the En family genealogy. She wanted them to live their lives as nameless, insignificant people, like rats in a sewer. And Chengye indeed had that intention, but he was taken aback by Enji's sudden accusation, his face flushed with embarrassment. Juror, Wronger is your own sister, it's only natural that she be included in the family genealogy. Don't look at me like that. I am your father, remember your position as the eldest daughter. Yes, I am the eldest daughter, but a father who doesn't discipline his children is at fault. Haven't you ever learned that, father? Enji retorted coldly. I guess you haven't, otherwise you wouldn't have kept a mistress outside, driven your wife to death, and raised another daughter who would steal another girl's fiance. I suppose that's what you call good upbringing, isn't it? And Chengye turned red with anger, speechless, pointing at Enji. Enrong on the other side burst into tears. Pei Yu stood up, glaring angrily at Enji. Enji, do you know why I don't like you? Because you are arrogant and uncultured. You are not as gentle as Wronger, not as considerate, and certainly not as well-mannered. She would never disobey her father or husband. Enji chuckled. Her engagement to Pei Yu was arranged by her mother when she was 1 month old. From childhood, Enji knew she had a fiance. When Pei Yu grew up to be handsome, she wholeheartedly prepared for their wedding. Back then, she was gentle and considerate, always obeying her father and Pei Yu. As for her current resentment, it was accumulated over 10 years of suffering and hardship. Enji enjoyed watching Pei Yu fume. I guess I'm not as good at pleasing men as Enrong. You and Enrong have been close for a long time, so why are you suddenly so eager to come here? Do I have to spell it out for you? In her previous life, not long after Enji married into the Pei family, Pei Yu brought Enrong into the family because she was pregnant. Having an affair before marriage and then becoming pregnant, if this were to become public, a family with a good reputation like the Pei family would definitely not allow Enrong to marry into their family, and they would likely even force her to have an abortion. Why aren't you saying anything? Enji saw that both Pei Yu and Enrong looked pale. She stood up, walked to the eaves, and caught a few drops of spring rain in her hand, feeling the cool moisture. I've known about your little affair for a long time. I thought you were just playing around before, but now that you want to officially break off the engagement, then have your parents come here. And you, Pei Yu, must beg for forgiveness, kneeling all the way from your Pei family to the En family. Only then will I agree to the engagement being broken off. Otherwise, I'll file a lawsuit at Tianbo Mansion and Enrong's pregnancy won't be able to be hidden then. After a pause, Enji turned to Enrong and smiled slightly. Of course, if father dares write your name in the family register, I'll also report you for having an affair before marriage. In this dynasty, it was common for women to remarry after divorce or widowhood, no one would criticize them. But the law stipulated that women who had affairs were to be sent to a chastity house, where they would suffer a life worse than death. Enrong's face turned instantly pale. All her initial excitement was gone, she was so anxious she couldn't sit still. She had thought her plan was foolproof, but she never expected Enji to know about it. Pei Yu hated being threatened. Enji, don't push your luck. Wronger and I have behaved properly, nothing like what you're saying happened. Fine. Then, let's get a doctor to examine her, Enji said confidently, smiling. If Enrong isn't pregnant, I won't need your apology, I'll immediately agree to the engagement being broken off. Do you dare? Pei Yu didn't dare. He had begged his mother for days, but to no avail. If Enrong hadn't been pregnant, he wouldn't have come here so impulsively today. But he would never stoop to begging for forgiveness. NG, if you agree to call off the engagement, I'll give you whatever you want, gold, silver, precious stones, anything. This was his final compromise. If NG still refused, he would insist on giving Enrong her rightful status, even if it meant facing his grandfather's wrath. NG didn't need money, especially not from Pei Que. Just as she was about to refuse, she heard a cold, detached voice from the rain. Pei Que, you've become quite audacious, haven't you? Turning to see who it was, NG saw a figure emerge from the rain, dressed in black. His dark eyebrows were slightly raised, and his gaze was aloof and detached, like an immortal untouched by earthly matters. It was Pei Que, Pei Que's fourth uncle, a renowned figure in the capital, the youngest ever to achieve first place in the imperial examinations, and known for his decisive actions and unwavering sense of justice. He was destined to become the most powerful figure in the court. Last night, when NG was drunk in the tavern, she had playfully teased this future power figure. However, she had disguised herself as a man last night, so Pei Que probably wouldn't recognize her. In her previous life, after she married Pei Que, Pei Que never mentioned the incident, and even defended her several times within the Pei family. Seeing Pei Que and Changye exchange greetings, NG turned to look at Pei Que, who visibly trembled with fear.